Good morning and welcome back. For those of you that joined us for Module 1, thank you for joining us for Module 2 as well, both in person and online. My name is Ali Hirji and I will be your host for this module alongside my colleague Mark Dillon. This session is focused on healthcare. And what I'll be doing for the first 4 to 5 minutes is setting the context around what we know so far. Mark will provide a bit of an update, and then we will dive into how the incident or proposed or supposed incident from Module 1 is impacting the healthcare sector. Before I begin, I do want to remind everyone, as the disclaimer told you at the beginning of this session, all of the characters and the scenario here is fictitious. We certainly have modeled this around a potential real-time attack, but the characters, the roles are all fictitious. In this exercise, just as with Module 1, everyone here at the table will be playing a particular role within a specific company. In this case, we are a pharmacy dealing with the fallout that you saw in Module 1. Our pharmacy is called Appointment 2. I'm joined by 2 industry leaders, one from Canon and one from SailPoint, Canon Supra ITS and SailPoint. And then I have a series of individuals from Appointment 2 that are joining me at the table. I have an IT security team lead, that's Dhanush. I have Emerson as the CISO. I have Ian as our business development manager. I have Nilesh as our IT manager. I have Theodor as our incident commander. I have Lina Dabit as our government relations officer, and I have Kris as our communications lead. If I have got any of your roles wrong, please indicate it to me now. Otherwise, we will jump right into this. Let me tell you what I know so far before we go into an update from the media. Appointment 2 is a medium-sized pharmacy and drugstore located in a town of approximately 150,000 residents. They have 3 locations across town, and mind you, they are the only pharmacy service available to all of these residents. This pharmacy currently employs approximately 200 full and part-time staff. Before I turn it over to Mark to tell us what we know so far about this incident, I'm going to draw your attention to a news report that has started to make the rounds and has come to our attention. This report should be showing up very shortly on our screen.
Cyber incident halts prescription refills and essential purchases, putting patients' health at serious risk. This developing ODTN financial story has now escalated to impacting pharmacies nationwide. We are now aware that a cybersecurity glitch in ODTN's financial payment software that we have learned is called ODTN Pay has put pharmacy operations to a standstill, preventing patients from refilling critical prescriptions such as insulin and heart medication. Pharmacies are also unable to process any essential healthcare transactions such as blood pressure monitors and diabetic test strips. This is shedding a light on the urgent need to have better safeguard measures to help protect our vital healthcare services. This is Roshan Khan from ODTN News. Please stay with us as we receive more information.
Thank you, Roshan, for that news release. At this point, in the previous module, we were noticing that people are unable to make payments for goods, for services at malls, especially folks doing holiday shopping. We were seeing some level of anger amongst customers, but now it's escalated to a point where it could transcend into a life and death issue as well. Mark, at this point, can you tell everyone at the table, as well as those watching and listening, what do we know so far? How far have we come? And what do we know now?
Thanks, Ali. So first, I'd like to give some context from our first module. And during that module, we were discussing a company called Rocket Ledger Express that was a payment broker So when you go to a store and use a handle to purchase, that goes to another company, usually a third-party intermediary, and they were having some software issues. It looked like it was because of an update that they applied, which was much needed, years after it should have been done. This actually happens in some production environments because if you don't have good governance, security can be an opponent of keeping things up and keeping things running. So don't take it down now, we need to keep it running, we'll do those patches later, until eventually it becomes a serious issue. In that particular instance, they could have rolled back to the old version and reintroduced some pretty serious vulnerabilities, or they could have stayed down. And so now we're shifting over to being part of one of the companies that could be a partner with them, that actually has the payment terminals and now needs to transact business with their customers. Appointment to the pharmacy, which is a medium-sized pharmacy with multiple locations, is now noticing that it does not have the ability to transact payments and is missing some of its reporting data on the financials coming from the terminals. What we do know right now is that we have our technical team investigating it. Our operation does not have a huge IT team, and so what's happened is the third-party vendor has done a lot of the maintenance, and in fact, initially when this product came in, it didn't come in under IT, it came in under another part of the business, and it's only been recently that IT has started to take care of the overall package. And IT is currently investigating if it's our software, if it's something to do with our network, but we know that right now we don't have the ability to transact.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I do want to make one comment, especially for those who are watching online, is keep in mind that all of us here, myself as the host, but everyone else, are part of a company called Appointment 2. And while on your screens you see our names, you see our corporate titles, which is our real-life titles, for the purpose of this game, we remain within the organization Appointment 2. Mark, thank you for jumping in and providing us some system support at this point. My job here right now at Appointment 2 is to bring everybody together. I understand a little bit about security, but not too much, but we do have our CISO, who we recently hired. Emerson, if I can bring you into this conversation based on what you've heard from Mark. My biggest concern, as I start to even loop in the board, my biggest concern right now is, why was this application not already in IT's purview? And why did it happen a little bit later on? What are some concerns you have at this point?
Well, I think that this is one of the cases where shadow IT practices was existing at the organization, and it's something that we were working on, and now it's come to life, and we know that we need to do better next time.
Mark, if I can bring you back in. One question that we're starting to get from the outside as well is, can we say this with certainty to Emerson as well as other members of our security team like Dhanush that this is a security incident?
So we don't have evidence to say that it is yet. And so if we determine that this is something that affects the safety of our systems, then we would have to behave differently. We would already be behaving right now internally as though that is a possibility. And so some of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, are there some things we should turn off out of caution, especially given that it's already not functioning? We are currently contacting the support vendor to find out, is this something that they're aware of, and is there some actions that we need to take? Did we just make a mistake internally? And but at this point, I would say we don't know that it's a breach. We don't know that it's a security incident, but we should take it very seriously as though it could be.
Thank you, Mark. I'm probably going to have to loop in a few other folks in this. And again, everyone here that's at the table, feel free to chime in when you need to. I've got some information about an email that was sent out, and it'll pop up shortly on the screen. But I'll read this out and give you some context over here. This is an email sent by Andrew, and all of you can see it we can see it on our monitors here as well as the big screen behind us. It's an email from Andrew. Now, it was sent today, December the 4th, and Andrew says, "Hello team, I just got off the call from ODTN Pay." I assume he means ODTN Financials. "Seems like they're having an issue with some payment systems. In the meantime, please inform staff and customers of the situation. Reassure them that we are working closely with our partners to resolve the issue quickly. Consider offering manual payment options or holding prescriptions for later pickup to minimize customer impact. Thank you, team. Andrew Strauss. Ian, can I bring you into this conversation? Andrew reports into you and was not authorized to send out this message, yet it has gone out. Do you agree with this message, and can it cause more harm than good?
First of all, as a business development manager, I'm probably the person who brought in the software without telling IT, but I will not be taking responsibility for that. What I would like to point out is, your point is well received that Andrew probably should not have sent out that message, but the concern for us in the business development side of here at Appointment 2 is we want to work on the customer trust issue right now. Customers are going to lose faith in the organization if we do not communicate with them as to why they cannot get their prescriptions, as to what the problem is. We also have concerns from the business development side as to privacy. We've heard that this is a thing in the pharmaceutical space. We're not sure what it means, but we are very concerned when we hear about it. So should we be concerned? And I want to ask IT and the CISO if this is a problem that we have to worry about. Our relationships with clinicians are the most important part. 85% of our business is clinicians referring people through the door, and if clinicians start to doubt that we can deliver because of an IT problem, see what I did there? It's an IT problem. Then we're going to start to lose business. So we really need to understand what's going on and how soon can we get back on the air. And I think lastly, where I'm also very concerned is, as a pharmacy, we need to make sure that we have good inventory management. And so any delays in procuring the compounding materials that we need are going to have a knock-on effect where prescriptions are going to back up and back up and back up. So we need to stay on top of all these things. So that's, Andrew's email is definitely not appropriate, and we will have a conversation about that. But I have this list of concerns I'd like to bring forward.
Noted. Thank you very much. And Emerson, I'll ask you to mute as well while I go to our incident commander, and then I'll go to our experts from both Canon and SailPoint to provide some expertise as well. Teodor, at this point, you know what you've heard from Mark. You know what situation we're facing on the ground as well. You're the incident commander. Command us to safety.
Well, one thing we would want to do here is make sure, we've got a good cadence to our updates. We've got the incident response team together. Danush looking at security, Nilesh looking at IT, working with the vendor in tandem, trying to figure out, what the root cause here is. We also have to look at our contingency plan and our ability to continue operations if we're not able to bring things up in a good amount of time. So operating on multiple fronts and providing both updates to the business, receiving technical updates from the folks on the ground, and
So help me understand this though. We have, and again, looking at our operations, we were guided by the firm that came in to guide how we need to structure IT to separate IT and security. We have an IT manager and we have security. We have Danush and we have Nilesh. Mm-hmm. What specifically does Danush need to be doing right now?
So again, he's looking at it from a security angle. So again, we're looking at information from the various security systems and security monitoring type systems, but they're very intertwined with a lot of the IT systems. So, is it something that is happening in network? Is there, is the network choking up? Is there a reason for it? So I think they're each looking at their respective areas and gathering that information, trying to make sense of it, while we're also communicating with the vendor to see if they've identified anything in the meantime. So.
Fair enough. Danush, if I can bring you into this conversation very quickly and ask you to prepare your mic. And for those who are not speaking, if you can mute, that would be great. Danush, based on what you've heard from Mark, based on the instructions or from our incident commander, what's top priority right now for you as you've been investigating what's going on?
Yeah, so given the situation, like what we've been informed of so far, we did kick off the incident response process. So as you know, part of that always includes preparation. So we'd look at what our existing playbooks are, so how we can respond to this. But on top of that, as part of the first step in that identification phase or analysis and detection, well, we are looking at a couple of different things. So the first thing is from a SOC perspective, what are we seeing in alerting from our SIM, our EDR, for example. The second thing is how do we narrow down specifically around that infrastructure so that we get a good idea. The second thing to that would be, the third point to that would be looking at architecture diagrams is really critical at this point, seeing how within our shop and how we work with the vendor, what are those integrations like, getting a good understanding of the connectivity and the flow is going to be really critical to understand how we, where the actual root cause is. The third thing is if this is related to some of the software code, it may not necessarily be detected by our traditional controls for SIM and EDR. We may have to look at what we've implemented in our DevSecOps. Given that this was a bit of shadow IT, we do need to make sure that we had our controls for SaaS, DAST, the SCA integrated into the CI/CD pipeline and see what type of vulnerabilities were detected. And since it was moved from a development to a production environment, so it'd be interesting to know what we've identified and mitigated where possible. The other thing is if this is running on a containerized application, for example, it'd be good to see what type of alerts we received on our runtime defense. So those are the sort of 3-4 streams that we'd be looking at right now to see where exactly the issue is. But this is what we are looking at. We don't have any further information yet.
Anush, thank you for that. Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you because we do have the support of Nilesh, our IT manager. One concern that's coming up from other members of the executive team is if, as we've understood, this is some form of dangerous code that we've deployed, shouldn't we have had controls to identify and catch this before we deployed? And secondly, can you ask Nilesh how he could support the work that Danush is doing at this point?
Right. So what we do know is that this application, which is critical to our business, was originally brought in on the business-only side, working with an external party, and didn't include IT, so it didn't have our normal governance and controls. And what happened is it looks like recently it was transferred over to IT, and there were some long-standing vulnerabilities that were there that were patched per the normal IT process. It seems like that is causing some issues, and at this point, we're still learning how this application works. We're still figuring out the right way to run it, and so we have several options. We could roll back, for example, but if we did that, we're introducing critical public-facing vulnerabilities. And so that's the decision that we're currently left with. And I think we're going to have to put some more governance around this application. And
Yep. IT, Nilesh, do you feel supported enough to take actions from here, or are there any other concerns that are coming up on your table?
So, Ali, we understand that this was a shadow IT application. Now this has come to our lap. We're not happy about it. It does still not matter because it's an organizational issue. Our main goal is to restore our services. So we are currently continuing the technical response. I'm leading the technical response side of it. We've checked the application logs, system logs. My colleagues have checked the security side of it as well. What we know at this point is that updates have caused these issues. What we know at the moment is two of our branches are down. We're trying to confirm if third branch is down as well or not. My other goal is to restoration of the services. So I want to understand how do we revert back to our backups and then restore our services. We're also have on call with the vendor to understand if rolling back to a previous version would bring back us up to operational state.
Nilesh, thank you for that. I will confirm for you that the third store is down as well, and we are beginning to see a lot of concerns prop up. I have got two experts from industry who have graciously agreed to join us today. I'm going to start off with Nareen from a identity perspective, we heard in our previous module as well that there are some actions that need to be taken at this point. Based on what you know about our operations and the shadow IT culture that we have, what do you recommend we have to do in the immediate next steps?
Yeah, usually what you hear in these kind of scenarios is a very reactive approach. You have third-party vendors who need to get into your systems to do some privileged or require privileged access to do certain tasks. And that really requires a way of onboarding these people into your systems. And typically that ends up happening through some sort of IT ticket, not really tracked the way you would typically onboard some of your full-time employees. So you have to be very cautious in the way you onboard these types of third-party identities, whether they're bots, whether they're RPA service accounts. You want to ensure that you apply the same level of a governance and lifecycle management as you would with your full-time employees, if not even more. You want to make sure that their access is removed in a timely manner. There's periodic review and ensuring that that access is still valid. And so you want to really make sure that the folks who are getting access into your systems are the right folks, and maybe ensure that the access is removed at the right point in time. And in terms of shadow ITs, you get into situations where someone wants to wear a cape and become a superhero within your organization, especially in organizations where you're a very small IT shop, so someone wants to get in and start doing things, assign access to themselves. You want to be able to detect these native changes. These folks are getting access not through the proper protocols. So you want to be able to detect that, isolate that scenario, and inform the managers or whoever they report to identify these types of users.
Noted, thank you. And I will tell you that one of the potential options we do have is we do have some third-party support as well that we could call on to. We have the folks from Canon Super ITS here. Now, we've heard two things, potentially rolling back to a previous state and then also getting more support to investigate. How would you advise us to go about both of these potential options?
Yeah, great question. So as a service provider, we are typically sort of brought in and we're notified third or fourth, maybe fifth in the chain of events as it's flowing around. And so our role fundamentally is a supportive role. And once we start getting word that there are usually an infrastructure related ticket, usually something would be coming in from maybe one of the location general managers, letting us know that there might be something wrong, or in fact coming from the headquarters itself. At that point, what we would typically do is we would start looking at the priority of the situation. Is it us? We'd breathe a sigh of relief if we find out that it's an application issue, at least initially, but then know that we have to support the organization at this time of year. We'd also probably grumble a little bit as to, what's going on with change management over on the other side to allow this to happen so early on or so late in the year and at Christmas time. We would then start looking at, what are our mitigations and what are our compensating controls that we have in place. Depending on the services and depending on where the infrastructure is being hosted, particularly the application, are there security monitoring tools, infrastructure monitoring tools, and in fact, having boots on the ground ready to be dispatched when required to go to the specific pharmacies so that we can get into the point of sale machines, we can get into the computers, we can do the reboots, or we can just have a technical IT presence on site to work in a three-legged manner with either the organization or with the service provider itself. And then what we would be doing is we would be relaying information up to the organization. So we would be checking the backups, the status of the backups. We would be looking for security alerts. We would be feeding that to the incident response team, letting them know backups so far look good. We have verified backups going back 30 days or whatever your retention policies are. And then likely, as a service provider in this small town, we may be servicing other retailers, and we may also be seeing tickets that are emerging at that point. So we now can act as a little bit as an information funnel where we are seeing this spreading across multiple organizations as well as, and using that as well to feed up into the decision makers.
I'm definitely going to come back to this very shortly, Justin, because how quickly we can potentially deploy your team is going to become a very interesting question as we go forward. However, I do want to now bring both my government relations and communications folks to the discussion, because we've been monitoring, and it's going to pop up on your screen very shortly. We've been monitoring for any complaints that have been made public, and we're starting to see that things are starting to take shape. I'll read this out for all of you. It's a tweet by Adam Singh, and it says, "I need to get my father's medications. I do not have cash, ATMs are down, and my father is very ill. I need help, I don't have cash. I will pay. Charge me when your systems are working. Keep my card. Oh my God. Hashtag do better, do good. People over profit. Hashtag help. Hashtag Trudeau." Lina, at this point, government relations, I don't know if you want to step in, or do you think our colleague in communications needs to chime in? I'll leave it to the two of you. You work closely with each other.
Well, I think I'll just start with part of it, but the comms is going to be a critical piece of this. So obviously, from a government relations perspective, one of the key things that we have to look at here is we're not looking at regulatory, we're not looking at policy, we are looking at life-saving medications. So how do we get life-saving medications to the people that need it? I can relate to Adam's point. He needs to get the medication. We live in a very technical society. How do you get something that saves someone's life? At that point, the key is going to be to bring in and engage the government services to be able to look at how we can support the pharmacies. Additionally, are the pharmacies, is one of the pharmacies service the hospital? Are there surgeries that need to be put off? What type of medication? So priority for myself will be the triaging, also trying to get an assessment. It's early on, but we do need to figure out how long this will go, because if this is prolonged, the people that may not need medications for a few days will definitely need them within the week. So looking at reaching out to the pharmacies, what systems they have, the ability to track. Do they have backup systems that are not electronic? Do they have a way to look at and triage what has to be filled today and what can wait another day or two? I'm going to turn it over to my colleague in comms, because that is a critical component of this.
So the only concerning thing is Adam sent out that unsanctioned email early on. So the concerning part there is that the comms team wasn't involved in part of that triaging up until that point. You should have had, you know, the company, we should have had with the critical incident commander, comms would be right next to them. And collecting information that is both concise, but also not nebulous. So we don't know exactly what the issues are here. So that would be very critical in order to get that out to internally first, as they are dealing with customers. But part of the communications team, I would be the lead. However, you would have several people underneath me, each having pieces of that partnership. So reaching out to the hospitals, reaching out to government, reaching out to there to get that collective message out, that's sanctioned by the company, on how to help the citizens who need their medication.
You know, all things regular, you would have had a couple of folks accessible to you almost immediately as part of the communications team, but it is a weekend. It is quite difficult now to get a hold of everybody right away, and we haven't necessarily been in this kind of a crisis before. What I can add is that the communications piece, both external and internal, is becoming a very big issue for us at Appointment 2. And this is going to pop up on your screen very shortly. And I really, as Mark prepares very shortly to give us an update on what else we know about the incident and what else we know about the security details, it's been brought to my attention that we're now seeing conversations between some of our managers at the pharmacies and with ODTN financials directly. In this case, Susan, who runs one of our Northwest stores, has messaged Randy, who works at ODTN Financials, saying, "Randy, do you know when our payment systems will be back up? Been down for a while." Randy says, "Don't know, I'm on vacay. Did IT not message you?" Susan says, "I see some stuff on Teams, but it's so slow, frustrating like hell." Randy says, "I know. Can you disconnect and reconnect?" Susan says, "Will that work?" Randy says, "Try, I guess." Nilesh and anyone else from security or the incident team, at this point we have multiple types of communications going out. How can we control this, and how can we limit the way in which some of our store owners now are speaking directly to our vendors and trying to take their own decisions. Emerson, you want to jump in?
Sure. I think we need to tackle it from top down, from the CEO and or CAO, communications manager, what have you. It's a crisis situation, potential crisis situation. We could go back to the playbook. It could be canned messages, but definitely it has to come from someone senior on the situation, and also the tone, the language, etc., needs to be taken care of, and that would come from communications itself.
Nilesh, anything that you want to guide at this point of time? Because we are starting to see, and I have reports coming in, not only do we see lineups at the stores, there's a lot of uncertainty and lack of clarity among staff that are on site.
Ali, at this point, we have to actually launch our communication. So comms team have to launch a message to the organization-wide, informing that who's going to be able to provide the update and who's authorized to provide update within the organization and outside the organization, and who is coordinating the troubleshooting as well as bringing the service back online. Apart from that, we also need to make sure our BCM team has been informed so that we can launch the playbook for our BCM perspective to restore our services, which could include reverting back to the manual processes. And in that case, we can at least reduce the burn that the patients are feeling from this perspective.
All right, we're getting some more information. I think, Mark, at this point, you have some updates for our security teams and our incident response teams. So I'm going to ask you to prop up your screen. It's going to show up very shortly. And if you can walk us through what we know right now and what other intelligence have we gathered about this incident. Mark, over to you.
Okay, so our team has been looking through what's going on with the connectivity issues. What we have up right now is some log files that are coming directly from the server that we believe had the connectivity issues after the update. And what we have is a log file which is showing that there are some connectivity issues using a protocol called SSH. It's a key-based connectivity tunnel that provides encryption and safety for the actual files we're trying to transfer. But this is a very hard to understand system, and it's new to us, so we don't know exactly what to do to fix it. The provider has done some things that are strange to us that would not normally be done inside of a system if we were to build it to be a file exchange protocol. And so we're waiting to hear back from them. What they've told us is that the update so what we know from them so far is that the update that we did, because we wanted to patch for some what's called a common vulnerability exposure, or CVE, essentially, someone could break into our system on the old version without actually having credentials. And so we consider that to be severe enough just to do an update right away. And so when we did that update, things broke. They're telling us now that there was a problem with the update and there's going to be a new one provided. And they're recommending that we turn our system off.
We've been told to turn our systems off. Dhanush, Theodore, anyone, we need assistance over here. Dhanush, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend turning off any systems. You could disconnect the NIC, but turning off the systems can result in losing important log files, so I would hold that off. The second thing is I'm trying to understand, you said that it was mentioned that the update failed, so is it still on the older version, or is it in a half-broken state of the old and the new, where the libraries were partially implemented and the rest weren't, right? So it'd be good to get that clarity, because in theory, you should be able to still run on the existing code or the older version if it wasn't fully updated, right? So I'd like some more clarity on that piece.
Yeah, so I can give clarity on that. The update did go through successfully. There were several packages that were updated through the normal package manager in this variant of Linux, and we're still diving into what was updated as part of it. We don't have clarity from the provider on what was wrong with what was available in the update. They have their own repository that we subscribe to as part of their product, so we get updates from them just like you would get updates from Microsoft for Windows. And so something that they had in there, at the time we did the update to patch the other security flaws, has broken the connectivity, but we don't know more than that. So the update did go through successfully, except for the fact that everything's broken.
Danush, I'll just have you know that our incident commander is also chomping at the bit to chime in. Do you want to chime in and then we'll go back to Danush?
I do agree with that. Like turning the system off would be a bad idea. You want to maintain forensics if we need to, so we should keep the system on. Potentially isolate it or look at that. There's also other options to look at. So the update did go through. I mean, doing a rollback, but if we did a rollback, then we're reducing security. But then potentially putting compensating controls or other mechanisms in place to still provide security for that system might be another option. So I think we're just in the midst of it and investigating. So,
Danush, do you want to go? And then...
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I did find it odd that they would still ask you to shut down. What would be the rationale behind shutting down the systems? It just seems out of the ordinary. Like, if it's in a broken state, then you leave it as is unless they're trying to hide something or not give us the full context.
Yeah, we don't know more than that. Our team definitely asked that repeatedly. They said that there would be a fixed update that would be ready, but they did urge us to turn our machine off. We said, is there a security issue? They said nothing that they're aware of at this time. And so we're not sure what's happening, why they want us to discontinue our system. Maybe it's causing them problems because it's doing some kind of strange interaction with them with the broken update, but that's just us theorizing. The other thing I want to mention is that our operations team inside of IT is getting a lot of pressure from parts of the business to roll back to the old version, and we need to figure out what we're going to do.
That's me. I'm the business. I want you to roll back, please, immediately. For real though, like at this point, corporate wants to get messaging out to customers as soon as we can because we are going to lose trust from our customers. We need to put messages up in the stores. We need comms to weigh in on what those messages are that explain the situation to customers and how we are going to help them if we have a plan to help them, if we do have manual processes. And we also need to get some sort of messaging out to our partners, right? Be it clinics that are sending customers to us for fulfillment, or be it our pharmaceutical partners that we are procuring supplies from, right? We need to let them know how we are impacted and what our plan to continue business continuity is.
Okay. I am going to go to our industry experts very shortly, just if you can take in all that you've heard and sort of present your perspectives very shortly and help us. I will have you know, and government relations and communications, we've received now requests from local council for an emergency meeting because now local news is starting to capture some very disturbing scenes from some of our pharmacies. This should be coming up. I'll play the report for you. It should be coming up on your screens in the next couple of minutes. Please cue into this and guide us on how we need to respond to this.
Cyber incident leaves women with diabetes without insulin, highlighting critical risks in this pharmacy outage. Urgent concerns are emerging as women with diabetes has been left unable to access her insulin. This disruption caused by ODTN Financial's payment software, ODTN Pay, has brought pharmacy operations to a standstill, leaving patients in critical state. We have Mrs. MacArthur here with us today. Mrs. MacArthur, how are you? How serious is this?
Hi, I'm doing not well at all. This is just terrible. I have no idea. I've been here all morning, okay? I haven't had breakfast. I can't take the insulin shot without my breakfast, okay? They told me I would have to wait a little bit, but I was not expecting this long of a wait. This is just ridiculous. I don't even know what to do at this point. Excuse me, I need to call my husband.
We completely understand. This is a serious situation, folks. This is Roshan Khan from ODTN News. Please stay with us for more updates.
team sort of compiling through what they know. We also have some more information about some timestamps around delayed prescriptions. Government relations, my first question to you right now is, I'm not of the opinion that I just need to provide an update to council and say, well, this is what's going on, because it renders me a useless response. What can I ask them for right now to support me with while I'm dealing with this situation?
So in looking at it, to be honest, and unfortunately, this is inevitable. All you have to think back is toilet paper during COVID and how emotions were running high. This is people's life-saving emergency medication. So not just diabetes, you think seizures, heart conditions, anything that someone counts on to stay alive. I agree, going to your council and just telling them what's going on is not going to help anyone. The media reporting, unfortunately, is not going to help, because what's going to happen is anyone who has any sort of life-saving prescription that they will need will be, I guarantee you, they will be going to one of their pharmacies within the next few days. If they need medication in the next few days, they will be going to this pharmacy. So you're going to have some sort of order to bring in security. You're going to need to bring in law enforcement. Emotions are going to run high. People are going to view it in the sense of, if it's my family, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So you are going to have to establish some sort of process to ensure that pharmacy staff remain safe, and that people who are waiting for their life-saving medication are not, put in greater risk by waiting outside or having people fighting, because this is going to happen, guaranteed. So you're going to ask for law enforcement and or security to be brought in, and you're going to ask for measures to be able to bring in government either at the provincial or federal levels to help offset it, because this is a huge risk now.
Kris from Communications, at this point I can also tell you that the weather is we're expecting inclement weather within the next 30 minutes. There's very little option for us to tell folks that they can travel to another area and we can transfer prescriptions. We are essentially seeing many of our services go down and folks not even willing to connect to any of our other services as well. From a comms standpoint, what messaging do you want to issue at this point is it a message of restoring calm, or is it a message of saying, wait until we have more information?
I think that would anger more people if we just told them wait until we have more information at this point. Obviously, we can't tell them at this, we haven't have a concrete idea of why this is happening. But part of the government liaison as well in asking council is to get more EMT emergency services into the area, and hopefully that the company at this point would have a very strong framework, I guess, to bring in additional hospital staff, additional liaising with other pharmaceutical companies in the area, and bringing in the medication and the teams that are needed, rather than having people venture out on their own, especially with the inclement weather. I think that would be part of the plan to communicate out to people, is that to go to their local pharmacies or contact the local pharmacies so that triage can happen, and the most immediate and critical medications can be provided while this situation is unfolding.
Ian, if I can loop you in, you're dealing from the business standpoint. I'm not too sure if Communications or GR has a full sense of the scope of what we're dealing with besides just prescriptions not being fulfilled. Obviously, these are now leading to issues with insurance claims as well. Other units of business will be damaged by what is going on. How far extensive is the damage beyond just prescriptions?
Yeah, you're dealing with reputational damage to the organization. I've said multiple times now, trust is a huge part of the healthcare ecosystem. Your customers, your patients have to trust that you as an organization are looking out for them, and when they get told that they can't access their medications, for example, there is that impact to reputation. So that's one of these that's hard to quantify. But then there are quantifiable measures in terms of loss of revenue, and that is going to be things like billings to different government agencies. If we're operating in Ontario, it's OHIP, for example, that's going to be paying for drugs, or billings to our private insurance partners. There's also going to be questions from those private insurance partners in terms of, well, were your systems compromised, right? So there's kind of third-party relationships here where we are going to have to justify to those critical partners that make our business operate that we are still a trustworthy, secure organization, and that we are impacted by a vendor that did not have access to our systems, we don't think.
Okay.
Right?
With that said, thank you for that, and I'll let the comms and GR team sort of rally around this and see where else we need to be communicating. It's going to be coming up onto your screen now, and again, on my technical team on the table. Some more intelligence that I've been able to gather for you is the prescription delays that have been happening. And it appears, and I'll read this out for you, and I'll read 2 or 3 of these logs for you. It appears that, given that today is the 4th of December, it appears that since the 29th of December, our downtown and West End location have had prescriptions delayed. A couple of reasons, peak hours and applications are slowing down or simply have had downtime. It appears that on the 29th, we had 42 prescriptions delayed for the entire afternoon, and this was put down to a system downtime. We're also seeing that on the 2nd, similar continued disruptions had happened, but they were spasmodic, and they didn't happen that frequently. We were able to sort of stall, come back after half an hour, and then process. With all of this that we know so far, and given what Mark has advised us, Noreen, I'll come to you. What are some steps now we need to be taken based on the fact that there's a lot of anomalies that we're beginning to see in the system, and even some very unclear details on how we're even doing some of our logging?
Right. Yeah, so what's important is to have a platform that has the information of not just now, but what happened in the past as well. Right, you want to be able to assess user access, people who have activities or maybe the ability to dispense medications in these applications. And so you want to track who is accessing these systems at one point in time and their activity. How, is it because they have this access, but are they really using it? And if so, are they using it more than others in their organization? The important bit here is also with all this data that's being processed, we want to be able to use data analytics to really bubble up insights for you. Maybe uncover users who are kind of considered outliers. They have over-provisioned access, or they, over time, they collected a lot of access as they lived in the organization, a common use case in a lot of organizations. And you want to uncover why are they outliers? Why are they flagged that way against their peer groups? And that will help you determine, and then you can draw, you can dive deeper into their historic information as to who granted these access to these users at one point in time, and has it changed over time? Can we do comparables? Right. So this is where you can use that type of information as an investigation approach, right? When you're doing RCAs.
But Arita, I appreciate that. But Justin, we've been talking as a team about potentially bringing you folks in to assist us. If we don't have all of this information ready for you and we need to go digging around for it, how effective can you be, and how much time do you think it would take you to give us some sort of support?
So the support can come fast because service companies want to serve. That's our core business. The issue, so from what I'm hearing from the group and sort of, distilling it down as a service provider, I have still just heard an incident. I haven't heard the word disaster yet, I don't think. So I haven't heard anything to my organization with regards to a hold fast or communication protocols with regards to communicating only to an incident commander, only to a single source. Sometimes it's very easy to forget your vendors when you're thinking, your downstream vendors when thinking about an incident. You're just thinking about the upstream vendor and the impact that they're having to you. So for example, we could see a situation quickly emerge where there is confusion with regards to how we're going about tackling the situation. If I'm getting calls from an individual pharmacist or a manager at a store, hey, I'm down, I'm out. As a service provider, I'm going to want to dispatch somebody to go to the point of sale machine in order to, reset, reboot. If I'm looking online and I don't see anything official yet from ODTN financials, if I'm not seeing anything with regards to hold fast, but there's lots of, supposition happening on X, and there's going to be a lot of misinformation that's flowing out there as well. And somebody said, "Hey, I rebooted the machine and everything is working." Okay, well, I may have a solution to help my customer at the pharmacy, and that would likely propel things forward. And I know the guidance was, don't reboot to eliminate the evidence. But from my point of view, I'm still looking at this as just probably an infrastructure or a web-based outage. I haven't heard the word security. I haven't heard the word like this. And I'm probably sending somebody on site to start flipping switches to see if that's going to restore services at this point. So I think it's really important to coordinate not only upstream and the impact that you are receiving from your third parties, but also looking at your service providers and your vendors to kind of control them as well, because you are ultimately the owner of the system and the solution. We are just providing support. Directly to your question, though, upon direction from the ultimate business owner and the leader, we can dispatch pretty quick. We have already checked the backups and the status of the backups. We've already checked the application, the ability to roll back if that is within our purview. We have people on standby ready to go on site to be able to be at best, the boot on the ground that you then can liaise through to understand the situation with the point of sale machine there. At best, to be able to provide that direct support to be able to restore that service.
Emerson and Nilesh, we're starting to receive some queries that communications has forwarded my way. Should we have not had some sort of alternative methodology by which to accept debit, credit, and insurance-based payments?
I'm going to say yes, we should have catered for some sort of redundancies here. That being said, assuming we didn't speak about disaster, but we should consult with our DRP and look into the business units to see what business continuity plans can be executed at this point in time to compensate for it. So it was a miss on our end, but the answer to your question is yes. We should have had some sort of redundancy in place or thought about it.
Nilesh, any reason besides it was a miss on our part why we would not have had another system in place given how fundamental it is to our core business?
Well, we know that this was a shadow IT system. That's why it didn't go through all the IT controls and processes that we would generally put it in to onboard a system. And as a result, obviously, this system does not have any BCPDR in place.
Okay. Mark, I need some more intelligence for the security team as well as the IT team. There's been a bit of talk about can we roll back? If we were to do that, how long will it take us? And are we exposing ourselves even further if we roll back?
So our IT operations team has actually come back with two options because they're getting a huge amount of pressure from the business about can we just make this work somehow? And there's two options that they've come back and proposed. They don't like either one. One of them is what we were just talking about. We could bring in emergency mode, an additional payment provider, perhaps for something that works on cellular that goes directly to the head-end server and skips the whole batch processing of our older systems that we currently have. They're worried about governance with that. They're worried about security, deployment, training, and they're also worried about how we would audit this transition of financial transactions because they know they're going to be asked to do it after this new system is put in, let's say, tomorrow. ODTN has told us that within a couple of days, they'll probably have a patch for us. They're still urging us to turn the existing system off, and we don't know why. We have disconnected it from the network, and we have also tested that we can roll the system back in a test mode. So we could put what was in last week right now. However, the vulnerabilities provide a opportunistic opponent the ability to control our system from the outside without credentials at all. There's maybe some mitigations we can put in. Maybe we can lock things down by certain channels. Again, this is building a whole system right now in an emergency. And so they're looking for direction. They're looking to see, do you want us to roll back and try and mitigate these very severe vulnerabilities that we can't patch on the old version, but we can maybe put some controls around it? Or do you want us to bring in a totally alternative system that no one has experience with just to get up and running so we can start receiving payment?
Danush or Theodore, anything that you want to add to this based on what we know?
Well, I would say that definitely might be worth exploring the potential rollback option. Again, putting those constraints we were talking about, the vulnerability effects, the authentication channels to the application. So adding layers there to that and to that connectivity coming inbound. There was also the matter of seeing those failed logins. I think I saw those on Mark's screen there. which is a little puzzling to have to dig deeper into that piece, and then just do a deeper analysis into the system itself before any rollback. A, preserve it, and B, see if there's any other connections that are attempting or other things that are happening there. So I would defer to security and IT to continue.
Yep. Dhanush and Emerson, whoever wants to chime in on this, I've received another query, and this comes directly from the mayor's office now, because given that we are such a small town, and there's some interest to know that if we are being attacked, why and by whom? Is this a situation where we want to respond to any of this, or are we still going to sort of ignore or not even bring up this scenario or this discussion? Emerson or whoever. Go ahead, Emerson.
I think the data would have to guide us here. I don't think we should jump to a conclusion at this point in time. Again, this is going to go to the public. It's the mayor. He's going to probably have to give a speech as well based on that. So I think if the data says we have a breach, that is with our internal forensics, looking at logs, etc., looking at data exfiltration, if anything, assuming it's an API at the end of the day, if it's malicious code, it could have a backdoor. Have we seen anything? If we have solid evidence, I'm going to say yes, we communicate that effectively in tandem with our breach coach lawyer, who's going to advise how to say, what to say, when to say.
I will also add this. Yes, GR, you have a comment to make, Lina.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that I think one of the messaging you can take back to the mayor is that regardless of whether it is an intentional breach or an accident, it is going to be taken advantage of, and that's something to keep in mind. Is a threat actor doesn't need to actually do the breach to take advantage of a situation that could work to their means, whether it's to spread misinformation, sow discontent, whatever. So, and I think that's maybe an important point to underline to the mayor, that whether it is a breach or it isn't, and you can't confirm at this point, the outcome, the potential outcome can still be the same for the most part.
Mark, if I can bring you back, or Dhanush, do you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think there was a question on who.
Yeah.
And I don't think for someone like myself in that role should be making that call on whom. Yep. So you do want to work with your peers at the provincial and federal level, so RCMP, CCCS, or even MGCS, or MPPSD, sorry, to give them the IOC information that you do have on hand so that they can take that across and put it, check against their threat intelligence and make a determination as to who it could be. Because if we do make that call of who it may spread, again, misinformation and cause other sorts of issues as a result of that information. So it's really critical that we stick to our role in sort of protecting the organization and then just let the others handle the rest.
Thanks, Dhanush. We have about 4 more minutes and a few more inquiries now starting to come in from staff as well. I'm going to see if Justin can help us and maybe Nilesh can chime in. Justin, a couple of comments have started coming in from staff that will this outage impact payday as well? Is there anything here that we need to be concerned about, or is it too early, or do you see the systems as being disparate?
So I would see the systems as being disparate right now.
Yeah.
Haven't heard anything online, haven't seen any official communications, haven't received any other tickets from any other clients talking about having their payroll systems impacted with what's happening right now. So from my perspective, this looks just to be isolated with ODTN-based deployments throughout its ecosystem. So I would, if I'm being asked this specific question from Pharmacy 2, I would then, or Appointment 2, I would then be sort of saying I don't think at this point we're seeing any signs or indicators that this is a wider spread issue right now, and you can probably let the employees know that at this point everything appears to be safe and you don't need to worry about that part of the business being disrupted.
Actually, I'll interject here and say, depending on our ability to reconcile our accounts with some of our partners, like our third-party insurance partners who probably generate a lot of our incoming cash flow, we could run into trouble. We probably have reserve funds for a certain period of time, but depending on what the bank accounts say, we might only be able to run 1 or 2 payroll processes, and then that's it.
I will also add to this that we have received reports that some complaints have now been sent off to the OCP, the Ontario College of Pharmacists. and we are starting to get requests to confirm what exactly is going on. Mark, there's a lot of concern, not just within Appointment 2, there's concern that is proliferating across the society and then with the governmental agencies as well. A member of the public who seems to be a little familiar with IT has come to the side and asked me a very difficult question, which I'm not too sure how to answer. Right now, we're seeing our payment systems being disrupted. Is there a chance that this can escalate where we could potentially be locked out of our environment and other applications?
So in some of the recent studying we've been doing, well, we're still waiting for an answer on whether or not we want to go to a rollback or we want to pursue the payment handhelds. I realize this is all within a few hours of all this happening and just realizing what's going on. We're not sure. Because this is a shadow IT application, we're analyzing what's connecting to it right now, or until we disconnected it, what was trying to connect to it, what was successfully connecting to it. We don't know if those are normal connections as part of its day-to-day operations. We are suspicious that the provider told us to turn it off, so we've disconnected it physically, but we just don't have history to say, were those normal connections, were those people getting in that shouldn't have access? And so we don't know what the threat landscape looks like because we don't know what normal looks like, as IT only took this application over very recently and it wasn't in sort of our centralized logging system, it wasn't being monitored by anything. So that's where we're at right now is, good luck answering.
Dhanush, since you've been at the front lines of this along with our CISO, can I give you the final word to tell us, are you concerned that this is going to escalate and potentially move laterally?
I think it's still hard to say at this point because we haven't seen anything that necessarily sticks out. If it is something, it could be potentially with the code or the APIs that are related to that service or that application. Our normal monitoring within our SOC has not indicated otherwise, but they could be larger things at play, and it's important for us to stay vigilant.
Ian, I cannot help but I have to escalate this to you again since you're at the front lines of the BD. I think you remember that tweet that we saw from Adam where we were asked, could we give away medication in a trust-like system where somebody will come and pay us back once our systems are back up? At this point, is that the desperate measure that the team's going to take?
Yeah, I think as a healthcare provider and a healthcare organization that's part of the community, it's in our best interest to be that good community member and figure out a way to operate even though we don't have access to payments. We could put in place manual processes based on, as communication said, a triage kind of process, most urgent needs first. And we could do something like take a physical photocopy of somebody's ID, reconcile that with a prescription that we create, and then just make sure that we collect payments later at some such time that it becomes available to us. So a manual process like that is probably going to be appropriate for most urgent needs.
Thank you, Ian. Team at Appointment 2, I appreciate all of you taking the time to come in short notice to deal with this incident as it unfolds. I think we've all realized we have a number of things to deal with. Firstly is getting our systems back up, understanding how we're going to dispense emergency medications, but then also understanding how far is this actually going to escalate and preparing our systems accordingly. Thank you for all of you who watched online and for all of those of you who are here in person. Before we go into our lunch break, I will remind you that this situation now will continue to escalate. When we begin at approximately 1 p.m., we will then go to a government entity that is being impacted by this. And as you saw some of the tensions that were emerging in terms of what council would like to know, we're now going to see those tensions escalate. The attack will escalate, more outages will get reported, we'll begin deeper investigations and try to come closer to what is going on. And I invite you to join us at 1 p.m. as we travel to the fictitious municipality of 37 Lakes to deal with this ongoing outage from ODTN Financials with their application ODTN Pay. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you in approximately 1 hour. Thank you once again.